Tommy Hines, and I'm executive director of South Union Shaker Village. I'm originally from Butler County, which is of course about 30 miles north of here, and then we moved away when I was a small child. I came back here to go to Western when it was time for college, and got this job almost the month that I got out of graduate school.
Okay, so where'd you move away for a while from?
We left here when I was in first grade and lived in Tennessee, and we lived in Oklahoma. We lived in Florida primarily.
So you moved around, kind of like how I did too.
Moved around a lot, yeah, with my dad's job. So I ended up graduating from high school in Florida.
Okay.
And a lot of my family still lives down there.
And then did you come back to Western? What'd you get a degree in?
My undergraduate degree is in music theory, and I have a minor in folk studies, and then I got a master's degree in historic preservation through the folklore department.
And how long have you been here?
31 years.
Tell us a little bit about the society that actually runs this place.
Our organization that kind of manages South Union Shaker Village is a 501c nonprofit. They established this here in the early 1970s with the purchase of 2 buildings,
okay,
and about 2 acres of land.
Which buildings?
They purchased the center family dwelling and the little building out back, which is the smokehouse and the milk house. And then since that time, we have amassed 500 acres, and we own 9 of the original buildings that are left. There are 10 buildings actually remaining. We own 9 of those now.
Okay.
And have just purchased the last one in June. So the most recent one in June.
Sure.
So it's still a work in progress. Lots still to do, but it's still a fun job too. I look forward to it every day.
So did you ever come down here when you were a kid in Butler County, or when was the first time you stepped foot?
The first time I ever stepped foot in this place was for a job interview.
Okay.
For summer work. I did summer work here before I actually got the job for about 1 year, or about 1 summer. And I'd heard about it, driven by it with my parents, but I've never been here.
Now, do you find that it's common with people who are local to something, they don't visit the thing that's usually right next to them?
I find it extremely common that the places that are closest to you, you tend not to visit, and you'll drive hours and hours to see something. But I run into people all over Bowling Green, all over this area, that say, oh yeah, either I've never heard of that place, or I've heard of that place but never have been out there. It's really, really common.
What's kind of the connection you think that kind of local people should have to a facility like this?
This was a major phenomenon in the 19th century. This place was so unique to have a communal village of men and women living out here, working and creating the buildings like they did, establishing these massive industries that were very, very lucrative for them in those days, and doing good things, and being progressive. They had black and white members who were living on equal terms here. They gave males and females equal power in the village. Leaders were male, one female. So they were doing some pretty terrific things long before the mainstream was thinking about those sorts of issues.
Okay, I have a question that's kind of a curveball. I didn't prep you for this. I should have. I just read John T. Edge's book called The Pot Liquor Papers, where he talks about the changing South and the food and everything. And he goes into history. He talks about the people on the farm, which are down in the Nashville area, that were kind of the hippie culture. Mm-hmm. But he made a reference that they were growing opium on the farm. But he goes, not too far in the past, the Shakers in Kentucky were growing opium on their farms. Was he talking about this one or the Central Kentucky ones?
I've never heard that at either. I've definitely, and I know our records pretty well. I've never seen that here.
Okay.
And I would be surprised. I don't know, unless they were growing it for some sort of an odd medicinal.
That's what he was talking about.
But you'd have to check their records. Not here.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't find that here.
Okay.
Hemp here, but because they were making rope.
Well, explain that.
Opium.
Where were they? Where would they take their hemp when they were done, or did they do it themselves here?
Oh, there were 6,000 acres here, and we have a map of this place in the 1830s, and you can clearly see that every piece of that 6,000 acres is being used for something. You see fence rows, so you see these lots where specific things were being grown, or orchards were being planted. Then you see these great pasture fields where they kept livestock, and meadows where they were growing grain and things. So, that was all done right here. And then there were buildings across the creek over around behind us that were literally factories from a 19th century standpoint anyway. And they had modern equipment, and they produced tons of things to sell, and they were peddling those things all the way down to down the Mississippi to New Orleans, and also to Nashville. Nashville was a huge market for them.
And give me the years again that the Shakers were here and active.
Shakers were here from 1807 until 1922.
So what was their kind of response to, like, we're hearing a lot about the Civil War and all that. What was their response during that time?
They were Northern sympathizers because they were, of course, against slavery. But they were in a unique situation being here in Kentucky, which was a major road at the time. So they dealt on a daily basis with both Northern troops and Southern troops. There was a lot of movement here during the Civil War, and they camped here, and the Shakers fed them